Alright everyone, welcome back to the second session for today class. So for the second session, the book that we are going to study is the Writing Right 3 book. So if you open your books to a specific unit, you will learn about the adjective clause, right? After we cover the type of, let's say, the adverb clause, right? The clause of reason, the clause of result, clause of time. Those are the adverb clause that you have extensively learned from it. So in this video, we are going to look at another type of clause, which is the relative clause, or we can call it the adjective clause. So the adjective clause is a lot more simpler than the adverb clause because you only need to use three words, which are the pronouns. It is not going to be the conjunction at all, so be distinguished between this. If it is the adverb clause, are those clauses introduced by the conjunction. But when it is the relative clause or the adjective clause, these clauses introduced by these three pronouns, right? So you might see more than three, but these are the general three pronouns. Okay, so let's start with the introduction. What is the relative clause? So here is the short conversation about two friends, and they are using the relative clause. If you look at the sentences that printed in bold, you will or definitely see they use these three pronouns, which is who, that, and okay, we don't have which here. So these are the pronouns that they use in the relative clause. So let's read this conversation all together. Emma said, I saw Natalie the other day. Natalie? The girl who played the piano? No, that's Natasha. Natalie is the student who dropped out of college, the one who never did any studying. She's working in the Vision now, the shop that sells very expensive clothes. Okay, so if you look at the relative clause in this conversation, you can identify which person or thing we are talking about. So the clause who played the piano tell us which girl Melania mean. The clause that sell very expensive clothes tell us which shop Emma means. So here, when we talk about this, why we call it an adjective clause? Because it modifies and tell a specific information about people, about places. So it functions as or similar to the adjective. Okay. So sometimes we can use an adjective or a phrase to identify someone or something. So here we use adjective, the tall girl, which the tall refer to the girl, the new student, the red car. Or you can use another phrase, the man in the suit, the shop on the corner, the woman with red hair. So these are the prepositional phrase. But when we need a longer explanation, we can use a relative clause. So here, the women who get up early, the car that broke down. Here, as you can see, why we call it clause? Because we have the subject and the verb. So who here is the pronoun, and in this case, it functions as the subject, and broke as the verb. So the question is, when we have three pronouns, which one you should decide to use, right? We have the word who, which, and that. So the relative pronoun who, which, and that go after the noun and at the beginning of the relative clause. So you can only use who when you refer to people. So look at the example here. Nick is the man who owned that enormous dog. So you can see who refer to the man. The little girl who sat next to me on the couch ate sweet the whole day. So who refer to the girl? So who only used to refer to people. So we can also use that, but it is less usual. So I recommend you to use only the word who to refer to people. That and which refer to thing, but that is more usual or more formal than which, especially in the conversation. So when you use relative clause in your conversation, use the word that. So the car that won the race looked very futuristic, didn't it? So here that refer to the car. So which can be a little formal, okay? So there are several restaurants which do Saturday lunch. So if you use the word which, you can interchange it with the word that. So try to use the word that, okay? So do not use another pronoun like he or it with the relative pronoun. So the man who, actually who we refer to the man already, but when you add another pronoun to refer to the man, for example, you think, oh, when it is a man, it must be he. So you say the man who he owned that enormous dog. Actually, it is wrong because we already use the pronoun, which is the relative pronoun who, to refer to this man already. Okay, so in all these sentences, who, which, and that are the subject of the relative clause. So here, when we use who, which, and that to modify the subject, it is the subject of the relative clause. Okay. Here are the relative clause pronoun as object. So subject and object, right? Harriet is showing David her holiday photo. So this is the situation. So Harriet said there's an old castle that we visited on holiday, and those are some people we met, a couple who were staying at the campsite. So there are different ways that they use the relative pronoun. So a relative pronoun such as who or that can be the subject of a relative clause that we have covered so far, right? So Harry talked to a couple who were staying at the campsite. So they were staying at the campsite. So this clause refer to the subject of the sentence. So a relative pronoun can also be the object of a relative clause. So Mike and Harriet are visiting a woman. So here, a woman, it refers to the objects of the sentence. And then if you want to add relative clause to emphasize or to give a specific meaning to which woman, so you add a relative clause which function as the object. So Mike and Harriet are visiting a woman who they met on holiday. Okay, who they met on holiday. So who here refer to the women, and the woman here in the sentence is the object of the sentence. So the old castle that we visited was really interesting. So we visited it, which means the castle here function as the objects. So again, be careful with the pronouns. So leaving out the relative pronoun, when you use the relative clause, you can also leave out the relative pronoun. You don't need to include who, that, and which. For example, here, and those are some people we met. It's supposed to be, and those are some people who we met, right? But in this case, you can leave it out like this. So when and how to leave the relative pronoun out? So we can leave out the relative pronoun when it is the object of the relative clause. We do this especially in spoken English. So look at the example with object pronoun. The man who Vicky saw at the corner is Sarah Bose. That's an old castle that we visited, right? So here we use the relative pronoun, but without the object pronouns. The man Vicky saw, right, is supposed to be the man that Vicky saw, or the man who Vicky saw at the corner is Sarah Bose, but you can leave it out right here. So there's an old castle that we visited, so you can leave it out as well, because here it is the object pronoun. So you can leave out the object pronoun when you can leave out the relative pronoun when it functions as the objects. Okay. So here are some more examples of relative clauses without an object pronoun. We don't know the name of the person the police are questioning, or we don't know the name of the person that the police are questioning. Alright, so you can leave it out like this, because here if you add the relative pronoun, it just functions as the object. The cake or Melanie bag were delicious. Okay, that jacket you are wearing is falling to pieces. So these are uh, the way you can leave out the relative pronoun. So another last point, which is who and whom. So I don't need to explain this to you. So let's see, can you catch up with this one or not? If you already know it, that's fine. And if you don't know this point, what should you do? Right? So I think you should ask your homeroom teacher to explain this to you. So everyone, thank you very much for your paying attention in this second video lesson. I hope you really learn about the relative clause with who, which, and that. So thank you everyone. Goodbye.